I'd also like to thank Dr. Subramanian Swamy for joining us live on this broadcast as we break as Operation Shaheen Bagh becomes the biggest talking point this Sunday. Good evening, Mr. Swamy, and thank you for joining us on Republic TV. I don't know if you've seen the sting operation, but if I could just summarize it for you. There is a student, a JNU PhD scholar who goes by the name Sharjeel Imam. He is known to have organized the Shaheen Bagh protests. He has made a series of revelations in a sting carried out by my colleague from Republic Bharat, Amit Chaudhary, in which there is an admission that it was pre-planned, Shaheen Bagh was pre-planned. The planning had begun 5 to 10 days before the violence broke out in Delhi. Pamphlets were distributed and it was all done to grab the attention of the Western media. The other part of the expose is even more damning because he goes on to name the Congress party, its former MLA. He goes on to also admit that after a while, cash collecting lobbies had taken over in Shaheen Bagh. He also makes a mention of the BJP, where he says that both the BJP and the Congress are going to benefit from Shaheen Bagh. Your first comments, Mr. Swamy.
Now it's clear it was not a spontaneous agitation, and my first appeal would be that all those innocent people who came thinking they are demonstrating for fundamental rights now go home and prepare to go back to your universities and start studying. You have been taken for a ride, you have been used, and very cynically. And therefore, all these demonstrations must now be brought to a closure. Two, I would like the government, while it's converting all this information into evidence for court purposes, they should arrest most of the top leaders, including the named Congress people, and whatever intelligence says from where the directions came from the Congress party, those people should be arrested under the National Security Act. Because that act is most appropriate in this present situation. And now we know what kind of PhD students in JNU have been doing.
That's a very, very big demand, Dr. Swamy. But there's also another thing. There is one amount of denial, despite us airing this sting and despite this admission by the organizer. Now, giving you some background of who this student is, a PhD scholar from JNU who not only organized the Shaheen Bagh protest, but in the past, after the Ayodhya verdict came out, he's known to have, in fact, called for the burning of the constitution. He's known to have mobilized mobs. In fact, a day before violence broke out in Jamia, he was right outside the Jamia Millia Islamia University, provoking Muslims and constantly asking them to in fact organize themselves and get ready to be lathi charged, get ready to block the roads of Delhi, because it's very important to get the Western media's attention. Today, after these revelations are out, and like you've been saying, the government should probably take note, because there's a hearing in the Supreme Court on the 22nd. What would your appeal be now that so much of information is out there in public domain?
Well, as far as the Supreme Court case is concerned, the only issue is whether they have a fundamental right to do what they did. Now that is the Supreme Court also knows and has pointed out many times that just as Article 19 bracket 1 bracket A gives you a fundamental right to act and assemble and demonstrate and so on, but the same Constitution, Article 19 bracket 2 says, in the interest of the security of the nation, in the interest of the security, in the interest of integrity of the nation, and a number of other considerations, you can impose restrictions on your fundamental rights. Fundamental rights are not absolute in our Constitution; they are subject to reasonable restrictions. So, therefore, these restrictions will apply squarely here. And therefore, the Supreme Court is bound to dismiss their petition as not worthy. Maybe they'll pass one or two remarks about using the appropriate amount of force and not excessive force and so on. But broadly speaking, the main prayer of these people will be rejected by the Supreme Court. That is what my expectation is. But what is important is that the Congress party has not reacted to this. They should react.
Absolutely, because their leader after leader came there. In fact, there is also a bit in the sting operation where the organizer goes on to say that it is one of their ex-MLAs who goes by the name Asif Khan who hijacked the protest, and the party even began fueling it after a point of time. Legally, Dr. Swamy, like you've been putting this into perspective, because on the 22nd we know there's a hearing. What we know so far is the fact that the Supreme Court has directed the police to ensure law and order when it comes to Shaheen Bagh. We've seen the kind of appeals that have gone out, but now it's all out there. It was never a spontaneous protest. It was completely political. So when a protest of this magnitude is completely political, when there are allegations of cash-giving lobbies, when there are allegations of a deliberate campaign timed to Delhi elections, can the people of Delhi suffer? Can Delhi be held to ransom? Can arterial roads and highways be held to ransom because of a completely political protest?
I agree, and therefore the obvious cure is they're using the NSA. And the NSA, the court cannot intervene in the beginning. They will be probably about 2-3 months under detention before the courts can raise any questions. So by then we'll have peace and quiet in our country, and we can go back to our normal business. But we also have to know that if PhD students of JNU are doing like this, what was going on in GNU? Therefore, my demand that JNU should be closed down for 2 years, cleaned up and then reopened is a most appropriate demand, and I hope the government acts on it. And the government, when Parliament starts, they must present all this evidence so that people know. After all, this whole demonstration is about Citizen Amendment Act.
Right.
And there's none of the things that they are alleging is there in the bill.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Swamy. Very, very good talking to you this evening. So a very important reaction coming in. 2-3 points like we would like to tell our viewers. Dr. Subramanian Swamy of the BJP making 3 important points. 1, the invocation of the National Security Act. Number 2, also going on and saying that the evidence that is available with Republic TV, especially the revelations made in Amit Chaudhary's sting operation, should be picked up in the Parliament, because so far the narrative that was even peddled by the lobby, that was echoed by the Western media, was the fact that this is India's largest public movement because there is anger against the Citizenship Amendment Act.